So there have been two big revelations from the Washington Post and the Guardian about the National Security Agency's monitoring of domestic telephone metadata, and then the so-called Prism program, which taps directly into foreigners' email and other internet communications. And this has dominated the Washington political agenda. The ultimate question that arises from the Prism revelations, and indeed the more that are expected to come, is whether there are adequate protections in place for Americans and for foreigners against the unwanted and unwarranted intrusion of the American state. Now, of course, the key law here is the Fourth Amendment of the US Constitution, which protects people from search and seizure, from unwarranted intrusions by the government. And that, of course, was written in a pre-telephone age in the late 18th century. Tapping telephones, breaking into the contents of emails, and tracing people's electronic signatures online, it isn't something that's obviously intuitively resolvable under the way the Fourth Amendment was worded. But most American lawyers, most civil rights people, believe that the NSA, as it stands, with the powers that it's awarded by secret courts, overseen by secret panels of congressmen, is a breach of the Fourth Amendment. So I think even though there's strong bipartisan support for the surveillance state, there's going to be a big pushback from the legal and human rights community, and a demand for President Obama, who after all came to office promising to really clean up the war on terror state that had grown under George W. Bush, a demand for President Obama to put in far clearer and far more reliable checks and balances to prevent the regular trashing of the Fourth Amendment. President Obama gave a very strong, very thoughtful, and widely applauded speech 10 days ago, about a week before the Prism leaks came out, in which he said, look, the security state, the post 9/11 state, may well have gone too far, may well have, had unchecked growth in all sorts of areas, including in its surveillance, and including the drone program, including the detention of suspected terrorists without trial. He raised a whole host of issues that he believed needed to be debated, and clearly signaled his worry, his concern, that he didn't want to leave a legacy. He didn't want to leave an apparatus and a legal system and a legal set of precedents that could be abused by a successor in the White House. Having given that beautifully judged speech, these revelations came out, and he's back on the defensive now and says, well, I asked for a debate, but I didn't want this kind of debate. So it remains to be seen whether the gap, the enormous gap in many ways between what President Obama says and what he does is going to be breached at all. And I think a lot of the answer to that depends on how many more bombshells are yet to come, and whether those bombshells do change American public opinion, which at the moment is fairly relaxed about these intrusions.